defining the academy, a big study for me was, if you're going to start a university, let's say, you have to say, okay, you're going to be a doctor. What things does somebody have to learn? And then what do they have to do to graduate? Well, the graduation in jiu-jitsu is the black belt. So if you're going to get a black belt from us, what's it mean? Like, what's that gonna entail? And I actually did a study, and I talked to a bunch of people that I respected, actually in a lot of different arts also, because, there's some amazing karate guys that I was close with, or different things. And they would tell me all sorts of different things. Like, it means that, about knowledge and this and that. But the best answer was from Renzo Gracie, and it was very typical Renzo Gracie. Renzo, what does it mean to get a black belt? And he looked at me and he goes, to get a black belt, it means you're a badass motherfucker. And it was very simple and short, and it's true, man. Like, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you're a badass motherfucker. Sure, there might be people out there that could beat you or whatever, but you're a badass motherfucker. You put 8 to 10 years of hard working, grappling with other humans and going to battle with your friends. And like, man, you're going to come out of that a strong human.
2 points away. 2 knees. Chin down.
These damn blue belts are getting tough, huh? Still got some kicks on.
Alright. So when I rolled you under, I couldn't get into that position. Yeah. But you kept rolling out of it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
No, too early.
You're a lot better off, but if you get here, it changes everything.
No space.
So you could roll through that way, which I think is probably familiar to you. Or maybe you could go to the top like you did towards the mount. But if you're mount and they're still here, it doesn't take care of that as much. I'd be hesitant to open the hands like you did. I would try to keep the hands shut and use the legs.
I'll work on that. Thank you, friend.
Everybody would look like that, just jacked out of their gourds. I'm like, man, I feel like a skinny little kid. The tournaments were crazy. And nobody spoke English. You couldn't hear what the hell was going on. You couldn't understand anything. You'd sit around for 10 hours waiting to maybe them to call your name. So these are from like 1996, 97. Luca Tali used to put out this Gracie magazine. And it was always like all the guys that trained and the best fighters in the world. Look, there's Fabio Gurgel and Mark Kerr. And it was all in Portuguese. They didn't have this in America. But then, like, here was Gracie Barra. If you looked, Gracie Barra was, their logo was the Tasmanian Devil. You can see him in the back there. And there's me, Ricardo Almeida, Gordo, my teacher, Soka. Nino was the best of the day, but that was Espacio Vital. This is a piece on Carlos Gracie Jr., who's a stud, started Gracie Barra. He's the head of the IBJJF. Amazing individual. I talked about him earlier being such an amazing influence on so many youth. But that was, the class. There's Flavio Almeida. And yeah, there's me. That was the restaurant I worked at, where I met Lucia Verissimo. And she helped me go to Brazil in some ways. And I fought Hollis Gracie, who Hollis went on to fight Bob Sapp in MMA. And you can say what you want about Bob Sapp, but he's 360 pounds, ex-pro football player. You would not want to step across the ring from him. And Hollis freaking beat him. Hell yeah, Hollis. And I fought him in the finals. I lost. I think I felt like the world was against me, that's for sure. But Hollis is a great human. I'm a huge fan. And right here it says Hollis Gracie in action. See? That's my big mention. But they made up for it a little bit here. There it is. Depois de passar, Hollis Gracie mostrou grande evolução, showed great evolution in his jiu-jitsu. Depois de passar por vários adversários, after he passed through lots of adversaries, crossed with the excellent American Amal Easton that had finished 4 fights, and Hollis won. But that was, good performance for me at blue belt. I finished 4 guys And then ran into the freaking immovable object, Hollis Gracie, who's, like I said, superstar. So I was psyched just to fight him and do well. Good times. Look, it's like everything. You got to get really good at a certain aspect, but you can't forget the whole picture as well. So like if you'll train the hell out of mount, you'll get there with their arm already part way up. You'll fight for that position more within your training. Like if you get good at the mount offense, you will find yourself there more often because you'll have more of a reason to get there. And the same as the reverse, right? You get used to feeling somebody savage mounting on top of you, then you're going to start getting better at your defense, and life's going to get easier in that aspect as well. So make sure, like, a big part of jiu-jitsu is just focusing on the individual positions, getting really solid at them, you know, and then just kind of running through the positions, finding where you have weaknesses. And then it's also important just to train, but if you only train, you're not going to get there. You have to do specific training. That's all I know for today. If people want to train more afterwards, please do. I'm sorry if we did too much technique. I see people aren't sweating enough, so I always feel like a failure a little bit if that happens. But hopefully it was a successful class. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Professor. Thank you. Professor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
My mom was the daughter of a doctor. My dad was the son of an attorney and a college professor. They were kind of expected to just go to college and then get a job and wear a suit and work for a big company, I imagine. But that didn't go quite, as planned for my grandparents because it was the late 60s. And there was a big movement kind of to rebel and change stuff up from that. So they actually, I don't know if they finished college or dropped out. I think they dropped out of college. And in 1968 or 1969, they moved to Taos, New Mexico and kind of moved off the grid and ended up living in not really a commune, but kind of a community of people that were living on this piece of land. And nobody had electricity, nobody had running water, no phone. So really off the grid. You know, we lived in a teepee when we started out. And then when I was 2 or 2.5, they built like a mud house. So my earliest memories are just playing in the dirt. Well, I mean, we had nothing. Playing in the dirt, running around. There was a couple other kids there. It was a very small community. There was probably 6 families there. And there was only one other family that had kids that I remember. So my friend was Abel West. That was my friend. Not my best friend or my worst. He was my only. And that was it. Good memories, and pretty different from how I think a lot of people grew up. But, when you're a kid, that's all you know. So it was totally normal. This was my guardian angel, Maui, my first pit bull experience. He was, I lived in a place called Ilha da Jagoya, which was it was an island that was kind of fallen money, and there was kind of ghetto in the middle. It wasn't run by drugs, so they didn't call it favela, but it was definitely a poor island. And for sure, I would have gotten robbed had it not been for Maui, my protector. So Maui was a vicious pit bull. For some reason, he loved American accents. You would go to the bars, and there'd be these guys that they called pit boys. And pit boys, they'd go to, let's say, a great party, and there's tons of good-looking girls there and tons of good-looking guys and all that. But these guys weren't there, and everybody's dressed nice, night on the town. But these guys weren't there for that at all. They were wearing like a wife beater with a jiu-jitsu t-shirt, and they'd have jacked up ears, and they were just completely looked like they were roided to the gills. And they were they'd stand in the corner of the club and just look so pissed off and just try to mad dog every guy. Like you just be like, oh my God, like I don't want to be near that guy. Don't look at him. They look like if you hit them, like they would explode like a balloon that was too full of air. They were there just looking to fight, and they were called pit boys. And everybody in Brazil knew what a pit boy was. A pit boy was somebody that was like a pit bull, but it was a human pit bull who just wanted to fight. And yeah, it was wild. Typically, it worked out because the pit boys would find each other and then fight. And you would be like, nope, I'm here for something else, you know, like you go about your thing. But it was definitely a thing in Brazil. It was wild. Look at this, sugar loaf. This was sent from Brazil. What's the date on it? 1995, it looks like. Helen was my grandma. Go on. Dear Helen, I've been here for 1 month now and I really like it. I live on an island called the Ilha da Gigoia in Rio. I have a big yard and one side is open to the water, a big river. I have a job doing acupuncture where I learn a lot and get paid well. I live a half-an-hour walk to a nice beach and train jiu-jitsu every day. I spelled jiu-jitsu wrong. Except Sunday. It's really beautiful here and people are really friendly. I'll send pictures when I get some. Hope all's well with you. Love, Amal. Letter to my grandma right after I got to Brazil. This is Sao Paulo. This is all I really need to film because this is all it really looks like.
Huh?
It's a bunch of fucking buildings. Toninho. Crazy Guerrero. I'm speaking to my camera. Huh? Yeah. Cuidado com a queda aí, Amal. Cuidado com a queda, hein?
Tá sempre irritado, reclamando da porra toda. Rapaz, quem sujou a minha louça, meu banheiro, a casa da porra tá toda mijada. Aí a cama já ficou quebrada. Tô bolado com essa porra, vou te meter a porrada, meu amigo, vou te dar de cama aqui nos caras. Olha, vizinho, tira a camisa. Cuidado nessa porra aí, não pisa. Cuida fora com meu amigo.
Go to the check now? Or no, we're not on the check yet. Let's go two. Beautiful. Three. That one felt great.
I was obsessed with Thai boxing and I was training a lot. Doug Pandorf was my first kind of martial arts teacher for a long time. And I would house sit his house, which was connected to the dojo, to his like little place where he would teach classes. And I would house sit that for the weekends. And I'd have all my friends over and I was probably 14 and we'd have a couple of beers and we'd put on the gloves and we would fight. And I would have a headache all weekend. It wasn't great, you know. Those would be painful weekends. And then I fought in the ring, you know, a couple full contact fights. And I would get beat up. My shins would be all beat up and I'd be hobbling around forever. And then I started jiu-jitsu and I just finished a fight and my shins were so banged up I could barely walk for like 2 or 3 weeks. I was bartending at a restaurant at that point. I got a job bartending before I was 21 because I was crafty. So I was bartending and I'll never forget the manager of the restaurant came up and he looked at me and I had a black eye, you know, and I was dressed nice. It was a fine dining, you know. So I was wearing a nice shirt and a bolo tie, total New Mexican style. And he looked at me and he goes, he shook his head and he goes, Amal, what happened to your eye? And I was like, oh, just training. And he goes, you're going to have to decide if you want to be a boxer or a bartender. I'd already decided bartender was stupid. So I ended up being a boxer. I preferred the black eye to the bolo tie. And there was no Gracie Jiu-Jitsu as it was known back in the day in America. Hardly any. Maybe only in California. Penzo wasn't in New York yet. There might have been a few other spots, but the only people that were really known was Chuck Norris had brought out the Machados and a couple of the Gracies, and he kind of sponsored them. So there was the Machado brothers, and then there was a couple of random, others, like Henzo was out for a little bit, and some other people, Hoyce and Horian came out with him. This guy who was a Navy SEAL, Marcos Gonzalez, he was stationed at Coronado, and he moved out to Santa Fe to study acupuncture. And he started a little group of guys doing jiu-jitsu. And he came into our school just to show us what it was about. And in my fight, I had fallen down several times during the fight. It didn't matter. He fell down, got back up. But we trained, and he murdered me. Not only there was nothing I could do on the ground, but I didn't get hurt. So he could have literally ended my life, no question about it, broken any of my limbs, and I was not injured at all. So that was cool to me, because I'd just done 2 fights, and I won one and I lost one, and both of them I was hobbling around and beat up and they hurt. And with the jiu-jitsu, I felt like I could just go really hard and not get injured. And that was it. I was in love. There's a certain part of me that wants to be one.
Wants to what?
Wants to jump off of that. Just wants to be free. Not because I want to die by any means. But when I get that feeling, I gotta hold on and be like, what the fuck?
It's crazy how we have the urge to just throw it all away.
But it's not to throw it away, it's that you want, You want to know what it's like to fly.
As Amal prepares for maybe his death.
No, don't say that shit.
It's not funny.
Don't say that shit. I'm not even kidding.
His perfect flight. First in Brazil.
Virgin experience.
What's that?
See the bottom.
Okay, see you at the bottom.
Run. Fantastic. Woo! Let it fly. Let it fly, I think it sounds crazy to a lot of people, but what was going on in America was you could look at Black Belt magazine and there was these clowns posing as martial artists who would never fight. A lot of the stuff that they were doing was ridiculous. It was mind-bogglingly ridiculous. It would never function in a fight. but they were getting away with it just talking about how deadly they were and writing articles and doing some exotic dance, but it didn't have anything to do with fighting. I'm not saying that's all that was around, but that was very prevalent. Go look at Black Belt magazine from the 70s or 80s or 90s, and you will see some definitely silly stuff. There was no wrestlers. There was maybe a little bit of kickboxing. There was no boxing. It was some wild stuff. So in Brazil, at least, there was a very real feeling to what was going on. Like, man, the guys that said they were martial artists, they were fighting. And, you know, if you were a runner, you couldn't say I'm the fastest runner in the world, but I don't race. I believe in non-racing. But in martial arts, people said, I'm the toughest guy in the world, but I believe in nonviolence, so I could never fight. But if we did fight, I would kill you. I would probably pull your heart right out of your chest. And that's what was going on in America and a lot of places. So that was the big, you know, kind of the big contribution the Gracie family brought is they trained their asses off. They decided they were going to be a fighting clan. You know, they believed in procreation 1,000%. You know, Helio had 21 children. Imagine 21 children. Carlos had 12. Hobson had, I believe, 5, only 5. And Helio told me, I got to sit with him when he was 90, and he looked at me and he said, Amal, the only reason I had only 21 children is because that's all God wanted me to have. He said, because every time I've ever been with a woman, I was trying to make a baby. Because his objective was to have a large fighting family, a clan. So they all trained jiu-jitsu and they all fought. It was something to behold.
Into Nosy. I don't think I ever was in.
Oh, okay, good.
Real. That's good friend.
Go for it.
Some of these kids are doing a higher level of math than I am. I'm not. Fortunately, gravity and weight still apply. Fuck.
But both are good at
You got a really good high.
Yeah. Remind me again? Mateo.
Ah, old man tricks. I was stuck.
You got me once. You got me once.
I say we can do this again.
I remember it now. This might not end well. A wrist lock with the mat. Oh yeah, I'll take it. I got some weight on you. Put that old man weight on you. Heavy? A little bit.
What, 190-ish?
No, how do I feel? Only 190?
What,
Dang,
200?
that's like an insult. I'm like 210, but I should feel 250 if I'm doing my job right.
Ei, Van Damme.
Esse fica maneiro. Esse tá fedendo.
Ô, linda, oi, batata, o morango. Sou campeão.
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 Chega aí, cara, se tiver, se eu achar que tiver.
Um rapaz apenas de 25 anos, campeão, uma categoria acima.
Bate ela.
Levada, master.
Gruda com esse porra.
Master.
Sou meu amigo, viado namorado dele. Oi, sorrisão. Tá bom, acabou. Tchau, galera. Samoa. The Brazilian Killer.
Eu chego já na mudança.
Uma rapaziada aí, Amal. Amal vai filmar a rapaziada agora.
Manda eu vou mandar um break.
Padrilha,
É o
padrilha.
bandido Arroz.
Queria apresentar.
Arroz. Fala alguma coisa, Fifi.
Não, meu irmão. É, Rocha, bota o DVD aí pra você que mexe com
Ô, Bob. Ô, Bob, vamos pra gente. É surf subúrbio. E como está sentindo?
Eu tô me sentindo
Embolado.
bolado. Não tem. Fica.
Oh, isso é Nino.
Juninho.
Elvis, reincarnated as a Jiu-Jitsu champion.
Very strong.
King Toga. Like a cara mais linda da festa. Boa.
And the best fighter in Jiu-Jitsu.
Campeão.
B.
Fala pelo arroz.
Tem fera.
Enza. Garotinho. Alf. Marcelo Berry. É o pai deles. Our noble guy.
Muito, foi assaltado. Pistola na mão, 3/8. Amal, you best friend.
It's cool to revisit the tapes. Actually, I was thinking today I have to go look at some more. That was a long time ago. You know, I've lived many lifetimes, I feel like, since I lived in Brazil. Showing up there, not really speaking the language. Nobody spoke English because the dollar was weak. I was dirt poor, but had enough to train and eat basic stuff. And, you know, it definitely was a wild experience. So getting to watch those videos and just see all the old faces. And one of the cool things about Jiu-Jitsu, especially in the era that I learned it, was that whole crew from Gracie, Baja, man, everybody that had, I mean, with very few exceptions, everybody that had a good work ethic made great lives for themselves through Jiu-Jitsu. There's a lot of people that talk about, well, where Jiu-Jitsu really came from these days, whether the Gracies really invented it, all that. What I can say is without the Gracie family, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. And no one in my academy would be either. So they had such a cool influence on everybody. So getting to go back and look at those videos, and there's some wild characters in there, you know, like we were staying at Hyan Gracie's house, and Hyan, you know, he had tattooed on his back, Gracie Devil. And he definitely fought for the flag no matter what. Hyan Gracie was a controversial character, to say the least. He was super kind. He'd pick me up for training, take great care of me. So, you know, I got nothing but love for him, but he was not loved by everybody. When we were at his house, I was sitting up on the ledge, and then I looked up at the roof, and there was all these bullet holes in the roof. And I was like, what the hell is that? And I looked down, and there's a big wall. So the bullet holes were aligned from the street over the wall, through the window, into the roof. They'd shot up his house like a week before we were there. So as soon as I saw that, I went, oh, fuck, and like sat down on the ground. And because, you know, you had to mind your P's and Q's when you're hanging out with that crew a little bit. Those guys, they fought. Like, that's what they were famous for. Like, the Gracie family shed, you know, sweat and blood, you know, for the success that Jiu-Jitsu has today. Like, you'd go to a tournament, and if you were with Hyan, you'd be like, if Hyan sees Macaco, then they're fighting. There wouldn't even be words exchanged necessarily. It would be, you'd know that was going to happen. It was different from my peace and love upbringing. Good times. My grandparents on my dad's side, Henry and Helen Easton, they traveled a lot. Like they went to Nepal and China, like they were among the first Westerners allowed into China. They visited Moscow and all these places that in the era were not places that Americans went. And that definitely instilled a sense of travel in me. When I was 12 years old, my grandpa took me to Africa because he wanted me to see the animals before they were extinct. Because he said, this is something that won't be around forever. I want you to see these animals. So I went with, rolls of film and took all these pictures of all these birds and animals, and it was wild. It was cool. I grew up in kind of an esoteric household. I was born in 1970. My parents were hippies. They were kind of supposed to go to college. They were children of, kind of white collar, and they dropped out of that whole system, left school, and moved off the grid in New Mexico. So it was kind of a big hippie commune. So I grew up with a lot of kind of different stuff. One of the things that we had around a lot were, like we had this one shaman that was kind of around that I always kind of looked up to. He was a white guy that had lived in Guatemala with a bunch of indigenous people, and he became like the witch doctor of the tribe, and he lived there for, 15 years or something. So this super eccentric white guy who lives in New Mexico, lives in a teepee, he's like always covered in beads and, definitely an eccentric dude. And so my parents sent me to see him. And so I went to see him, and we did some kind of ceremony, and there's probably some kind of ruins they throw, and, shells, and Lord knows what. He's smoking tobacco and blowing smoke in my face. And he was going to tell me my spirit animal, and I was stoked because maybe I was going to be like a jaguar or something cool, And he said, your spirit animal is a hummingbird. I was like, a hummingbird? What the hell is a hummingbird? And he goes, your life is going to help people find balance. And that's one thing that the hummingbird is good at. It finds equilibrium, and so you're going to teach people balance with your life. And I'm not sure if I believe in all of that or not, but it definitely stuck in my mind. And I think that's part of what we do with Jiu-Jitsu, is that we help people find a balance.
Going on into my room. Let me tell you something. These rooms are not made for big people. 7 a.m. Tokyo. Not to get run over by the recycling guy or the cars that drive on the wrong side of the street. How's my Japanese? How do you feel, Alberto? It's fight day. Man, be careful. This room's small. You're gonna break it. Look at that. Damn, that's Blade Runner for you right there. That's Blade Runner. Haha, Blade Runner. Hello, pretty Japanese girl. There's Haiti. Walk. Alberto.
Okay, it's recording?
Yeah.
Come on. 1, 2, 3. I cut you off.
Hell, man.
You moved.
I took a good picture of you, man. That's Tokyo. Look at that.
Tokyo. Hi. Oh yeah, she's digging me.
Come on there, man. Walk it up,
Get that stand. Good. Good. Now, that's how you fight properly. In boxing, I was on the left the drills are really confusing. When I move, they always get straight. Good. 90%. Good.
Segura aqui, aí tu vai ensinar pra ele o Sotogai, que é dar uma passada com a perna esquerda, lá na frente, colando ombro com ombro, colando o cotovelo no meu peito, vim com a direita aqui, deslizando no tatame, como se fosse uma vassoura, mas sem botar o pé no chão, ó. Faz um pé de bailarina, ombro como joga a cabeça pra frente. Aí se o cara mete a mão na gola, eu te mando as mãos na gola. Então fica preocupando com a segunda que entra. Então a mão é como uma seta, vou cair pra onde está a mão. Então para um lado, pá, pro outro.
With 1 minute and 2 seconds left, all the things you have to say to Amal students.
There. Last position. Nice.
Will.
Thanks.
Nice.
At this point in my life, I feel like the luckiest man alive. I mean, I've spent my days sharing, learning, and spreading jiu-jitsu, working my ass off, but never feeling like I worked a day. The people I've met along the way have enriched my life more than I could have ever imagined.